know why. I knew he didn't look like, the Marukas, but I hadn't really made that, hadn't really made that connection. So this is sweet.
Here, let's copy the link and see if it works.
she is now. He's with her. Oh, here we go. So many people there. There's Dustin. Sammy. St. John. Sit here. There you go. it. They're just, that's fine. It's filled up more. Needs to be terrific.
Like I felt like there was this really incredible connection, but I
Welcome, everyone. We are here this afternoon to celebrate the life of Donald Harrison Clark. His husband, Bruce, is grateful to each of you for your presence in person or online, and invites you to join him for a reception in our church parlor, right through there, after the service. There's a guest book in the entryway for you to sign, and for those online, Bruce would love it if you put your name and a note in the chat. Also, if you're online, please make sure you're muted. It just came to my attention that due to the wonderful attendance this afternoon, we may have run out of bulletins, and so if that's the case, please know that everything will be on the screen as well, and you can certainly ask your neighbor to share. Oh, and Margaret, there are a couple there, okay. As we begin this memorial celebration, please join me in prayer. Loving and eternal God, we are gathered here to celebrate the life of Donald Clark, beloved husband of Bruce Grimes, and friend and family to many others. It is always hard to say goodbye, but we are grateful for the wonderful life Don lived and know he lived it to the fullest. We ask for your presence with those he left behind, comforting us in our sorrow and embracing us with your love. Be with us all this afternoon as we remember him. Amen. And because Don always liked a happy hymn, please rise in body or spirit for our opening hymn, Joyful, Joyful, We Adore Thee, found on page 2 of your hymnal.
Glory,
reflections. Please come up to the pulpit so everyone, including those online, can hear your remarks. And do speak right into the microphone.
A passage from The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. You must know that there is nothing higher and stronger and more wholesome and good for life in the future than some good memory, especially of childhood, of home. People talk to you a great deal about your education, but some good, sacred memory preserved from childhood is perhaps the best education. If a man carried many such memories with him into life, he is safe to the end of his days. And if one has only one good memory left in one's heart, even that may sometimes be the means of saving us. For all us nomads, for both family and friends from near and afar, all of us who crossed the threshold of Donald's home were met with a good meal and conversation. There were countless holiday celebrations, memorable parties, and much laughter. We laughed all the time. Donald created many happy, enduring memories for those he loved. Donald created a home.
Thank you, Susan, for those beautiful words. Today we gather here to honor the memory of a truly remarkable individual who touched our lives in profound ways. It was the summer of 1993 when I met the most influential teacher I know, Donald H. Clark. Standing here, I know I'm not only speaking for myself, but for my fellow Moroccans, Omar and Anwar, I see you, who are here with us, and affectionately we're known as the Moroccan children. The lessons we learned from Donald are too numerous to count, but they all share a common foundation: family first principles. As young immigrants arriving in a new country with no roots or family to rely on, Donald and Bruce became our chosen family. They embraced us with open arms and provided the guidance and support we needed. As young adults, we came to realize the immense impact that making the right decisions can have on our lives. And Donald was always there for us, serving as a guiding light during pivotal moments and offering advice as we navigated life's most important choices. We cannot stress enough how crucial this guidance was in helping us find our paths in this brave new world. During countless dinner conversations, Donald would share his wisdom on the importance of showing up, embracing intentionality in our actions, and paying attention to even the smallest of details. His caring nature extended beyond words. He was someone who nourished those around him, both figuratively and literally. Speaking of nourishment, Donald was a man of many talents: a top legal mind, a gifted pianist, an artist, and an exceptional home chef. It was by watching him in the kitchen each night that I learned how to cook, and that inspiration remains me to this day. Above all, Donald had a heart that knew no bounds. He generously shared his love, compassion, and kindness with everyone he encountered. His presence brought warmth and comfort to those in need, and his absence leaves an irreplaceable void in our lives. Today, we reflect on the profound impact Donald had on each one of us. His memory will forever reside in our hearts, and we will carry forward the lessons he imparted upon us. Rest in peace, dear Donald, knowing that your spirit lives on through the countless lives you touched and transformed.
Thank you, Susan and Hassan. As many of you know, Don was a lover of music and sang in our church choir for many years. His choir friends will now share one of his favorite hymns, "My Life Flows On." fire. And now David, followed by Chalk, will share their reflections.
Years ago, I met Donald. It was the swinging 70s for gays in Washington, and Don cut quite the figure in that group. He was tall, red-headed, and handsome, and had a distinct personality that made him a leader in our band of adventurous young men. In our happy culture, Donald was the stand-up guy who called the shots of what was permissible and what was not. In a pre-Judith Martin, Miss Manners world, Don bore the nickname Miss Melly for his kind, thoughtful, sometimes withering judgments. Professionally, it was the same thing with him. We both worked the energy beat in federal government, so I also heard that he smoothly called the plays for his crew at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. That first summer, he arrived from Cornell Law School driving a beater car he called Penny the Porsche, and had in tow a large orange cat named Miss Rusty. Many of you probably recall the ubiquitous pair of dancing dash hounds scrambling around Bruce's and Donald's house, but I also remember that somewhere in that home there was stashed a big old cat that Don inevitably wore draped in front of him and petted. In fact, Don kind of was a big old cat. One example of Don's decisiveness was what Bruce called the Christmas tree imbroglio. The highlight of the Christmas season on Belmont Road was Bruce's tree lighting ceremony, followed by the singing of carols around the grand piano. That year, my guest and former roommate was Pat Patterson, a fire and rescue officer in Montgomery County. When stubborn Pat learned that live candles were to be lit on the tree, he informed Don and Bruce that he would call the fire department should they proceed. It was a standoff. They posed in front of the whole gathering, cigarette lighter versus telephone. Let's just say that in the end, the tree lights got lit, but Donald did agree to put them out after a couple of minutes. I remember Don's elegant mother, whom he tagged Big Wawa, Laura, as she passed back and forth through D.C. on her way from Washington State to her house in the Canary Islands. I remember his loving but equally formidable older sister, Valera, and a funky old Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud he had inherited from his stepdad. The car was stuffed in the garage and barely fit inside the structure. Inevitably, there was a not quite finished acrylic landscape painting on the third floor, along with a live Muslim or two. Altogether, the house was lovingly non-derisive. Finally, I'd like to recall Donald as a hard-nosed attorney on one of our forays to Manhattan in the 70s to spend the evening dancing away at Flamingo Disco or Studio 54. We also went shopping at Macy's. The men's clothing department had exotically been expanded, even offered a coffee bar installed between the dance floor pants and shirts. Those changes drew the attention of Morley Safer and his crew of cameramen from 60 Minutes. They interviewed Donald and me about our reaction to the new style men's clothing. He also covered Don's high-powered job at FERC and my somewhat less high-powered job at the White House. Summing up, he asked us on tape to describe what it was like being federal officials and also gay in Washington. Well, you could have heard a pin drop. Rearing back, Don informed Safer he better not use our interview on his broadcast, and for good measure, Don would take back from Safer the camera video cartridge. I believe a lawsuit was mentioned. So let's just say I had to find space in my return home suitcase for that CBS cassette. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm greatly humbled to be here today to speak to you all. I hope I can get through this without crying too much and in a way that you can understand me, and hopefully I'm speaking close enough to the mic, if that's any better. I first came to work with Don in 2012 when his boutique energy law firm practicing before the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, which I know you all know about from David's comments, dissolved. He and his associate Rekha Rao and came over to my law firm to practice, and that's when I first got to know Don in 2012. Working with Don since then, I've come to appreciate that Don has numerous social circles, including among others the arts community, the LGBT community, and the faith community here at Cleveland Park, UCC. I've had the good fortune of coming to UCC over the years for Don's art show, which has always been a pleasure, and getting to know Pastor Ellen. And Mike Postar and I were just reminiscing about those wonderful events. Don was always proud of being a member of the community here and in this faith community. And he would often share stories serving on the choir or preparing a new member a welcoming breakfast. I always appreciated asking Don about the Blessing of the Animals Festival, because I was excited to learn about what kind of animal squabbles were happening on the Monday after the Sunday. I always knew that if Elska was there, she probably ruled the roost, because as she did with the home with Don and Bruce. But I greatly admired Don for his commitment to his faith, which was abiding and truly a driving principle for him. But he did engage in numerous social circles, and so I know not many of you may know what FERC is, and I don't mean to give you an energy lecture here, but just to give you a little bit of a flavor for what Don did. He was truly a stalwart and a hallmark of the hydropower legal community. Initially, he began his career at FERC and rose through the ranks in his 15 years at FERC as a public servant, rising from a staff attorney to deputy assistant general counsel for hydroelectric licensing. He then served as the senior legal regulatory advisor to 2 FERC commissioners before moving to private practice in 1989. Less than 10 years after he left FERC, Don found himself facing a thorny legal issue that put him at odds with his former colleagues at FERC. In 1998, he was on the precipice, FERC was on the precipice of directing the removal of a dam, the 160-year-old Edwards Dam in Maine, against the wishes of the dam owner. The dam owner had sought a new license to maintain and operate the hydroelectric facility and had agreed to undertake environmental remediation measures to make sure that it could be done in an environmentally safe manner. FERC, however, was seemingly unmoved, and for the first time in its history, threatened to direct the dam be removed against the wishes of the dam's owner. Don represented the dam's owner, and he was thrust into a very high-profile role, mounting a public education campaign and rallying hydropower leaders around the nation to the side of the dam's owner. This is one of the relics from that campaign. Ultimately, FERC did direct that the Edwards Dam be removed, and the dam owner relented, withdrawing its appeal of the FERC decision. But despite that legal setback, Don emerged from that litigation as a leader within the hydropower community. In 1999, Don, though still only in the middle of his career, was awarded the Henwood Award by the National Hydropower Association. The Henwood Award is really a medal of honor and a badge of honor within the hydropower community, and it's typically awarded to leaders as a career achievement near the end of their career. But Don achieved that mid-career, which was truly amazing. And when I first began working with Don more than 10 years after that, I quickly learned that attending a hydropower conference with Don was like being the new kid at school and going to the high school prom with the quarterback. Everyone in attendance would stop Don in the hallway to congratulate him on his latest victory, ask for some guidance on how to run a play from Don's playbook, or simply revel in being near a revered celebrity. At the same time, the eyes of those in attendance would turn on me, because they were wondering who the heck this new face was with Don. Don was always so generous, introducing me as some brilliant wonder kid who had brains behind his operation, but clearly that was not the case, especially because I had just begun working with him. His introduction of me to others within the industry stood out as illustrative to me about the way that he gave credit to others and included others in his victories. Don always championed young attorneys and relished building up new legal talent. He closely monitored many attorneys' careers, mentored many attorneys and monitored their careers after working with them, me being only the most recent. Immediate predecessors of mine include Holly Kafer, who now works in the senior role at FERC's Office of General Counsel, and Reika Rao, who moved to California, is now an innovator in climate change policy. Beyond those he immediately mentored, Don was gracious to other attorneys within the hydropower community, those he technically competed with for clients. He was also magnanimous and respectful of his opponents and to those who opposed his clients' work. Despite Don's retirement, his former colleagues, rivals, and admirers still stop me to this day to share remembrances or to share condolences. It happened just this last week at the National Hydropower Association annual meeting in DC. Don's impact on and contributions to the hydropower community have been immeasurable, but it's really his personal touch and his personal impact for which he'll be remembered most. Working with Don could easily have been intimidating. He was, after all, a pillar of the hydropower community, revered throughout the industry, and simply a living legend, even at a very young age. But working with Don was precisely the opposite. Rather than being intimidating, working with Don was empowering, though he greatly deserved it. Don had no outsized ego. He built up his colleagues, shared credit with others, and took pride in fostering young attorneys. When I think of the various words that describe the work that we do, such as attorney, lawyer, advocate, the one that I think best describes Don is counselor. It's a much more expansive descriptor of what Don did and what he excelled at. As an example, for all of his great virtues, Don was not a morning person. So I recall in the early days of my teaming with Don, starting work on many mornings without his immediate guidance or advice, I began to tackle a legal issue or question that a client posed to us. I desperately wanted to impress Don, of course, so by early morning I had already run through all of the legal textbooks, research precedent, and printed up cases to discuss with Don. Don was always so suave and sophisticated. When he arrived, he would find my office looking as if a hurricane had passed through, and find me perplexed look plastered on my face. Rather than acknowledge the chaos surrounding us, he'd slink down in the guest chair of my office, and in his deep voice, ask what I had for dinner the last night. The question changed from day to day and was ultimately immaterial, but his point was to distract me, and that had the intended effect of soothing and elevating me. It always worked. With his arrival and simple question, he sensed and immediately diffused whatever tension I had been feeling, and he refocused me on bigger picture questions. All of my panic and distress simply melted away. I took confidence from the fact that he himself was not experiencing panic over the legal question of the day. There was so much humanity and grace in these interactions, and they were always what I needed at that precise moment. This week, I asked Holly, one of my predecessors as a Don mentee, about her memories of Don, and she shared a similar experience. She indicated that Don had an ease in putting himself in others' shoes, whether a client facing a confounding legal question or in providing her with a comforting ear in a time of trouble. She noted that she had had numerous such discussions with Don while sitting in what she called a womb chair that Don kept in his office. Don did not have that same chair when he came to our firm, but a womb chair sounds like a great analogy for what I experienced, because those moments with Don and the peace that he provided was truly encompassing and all-enveloping. It wasn't long after I began working with Don that I learned that his guidance and expertise extended far beyond the hydropower realm. I counted Don as a trusted advisor, and I leaned on him particularly closely when my husband Jarrett and I experienced difficulties at home with our son. Don always proved an avid listener and a sage voice of reason. He counseled me in particular to ensure that whatever struggles Jarrett and I experienced, to make certain that we maintained the primacy of our own relationship. He recognized that if Jarrett and I had a strong relationship through all of this, we could be a model of love for our adopted son. And he stressed that throughout all of life's ups and downs, Jarrett was the one that I had chosen to spend my life with and would be there in the end for love and comfort. In these moments, I came to appreciate even more Don's true and abiding love for Bruce. Don leaves behind an incredible legacy to those he touched. I have a few mementos of him that I always treasure. I keep this button hanging on the bulletin board above my desk at my office, directly in my line of sight, and I have two of his paintings hanging over my right shoulder in my office. But I will most treasure memories of his smile, his graciousness, and generosity in mentoring me, and those moments of exquisite and complete peace that Don's daily arrival to my office would provide. Despite missing him terribly, I take comfort in knowing that he is experiencing complete and utter peace today that only the Almighty can provide. Happy birthday, Don.
Thank you, David and Josh. And now we have time if just a couple of people have come feeling like they have something it would be very important to share with everyone in terms of their memories of Dawn. If so, just come up and Catherine. And somebody left their glasses. I'm going to put them right on the organ.
Welcome to Cleveland Park Church. I can't say it in the same voice Dawn would say it to you, but I'll never be here without thinking of Dawn. And isn't that the meaning of immortality? That we live as long as someone can remember our name. I did the flowers for Dawn, but really he did the flowers with me because we did so many flowers over the years together. And the bass section, Mrs. Donald. I just remember a day at the end of the year when I was moderator, I think it was 2004, when two men walked in the door and said, you know, we've driven by this pretty stone church so many times, and this morning we just said, why don't we go to church today? Well, how about that little church we drive by? And they walked in the door, and thank God they never left. You both gave us so much, and you still do, Bruce. I thank you for that. And whatever you see here in this congregation today is a reflection of the person we all are remembering here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you. I didn't realize there'd be a chance to say anything today, so I'm kind of pulling my memories of Don together a little bit. I'm Peter Kissel. I was a longtime law partner of Don's. By the way, I need to correct you, Josh, on one thing. Don didn't start out at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. He started out at the Federal Power Commission. And the reason I know that is he came there very shortly after I started there. I didn't know him well then. He was over in a strange section called hydroelectric licensing, and I was in the natural gas section. But I got to know him better over the years, particularly when I got into the hydroelectric practice, probably 40 years ago, something like that. And he and I became quite well acquainted with each other and quite respectful of each other's work. I think when we really connected is when I, by happenstance, you all remember the AIDS quilt down in the mall, which was huge. And believe it or not, he and I literally bumped into each other down there. And I have to say, I think we made a connection more then than we had before. And Don came to our firm, Grammer Kissel, in 2001, and that was the result of a fairly long hustling effort by my partner Elisa Grammer and myself to get Don into the firm, and we were absolutely delighted when he joined us. I have to say Don is one of the most loving and sensitive human beings I've ever known in my life. He was also, along with Elisa, one of the most brilliant lawyers that I've ever known. I learned a lot from him, but even more importantly than that, we just really enjoyed each other's company. I used to go into his office, or he'd come into mine, and we'd just BS sometimes for hours on end. He also provided me some very, very precious counseling when I was having some some personal difficulties, and I'll never forget that. He kind of showed me the way on some stuff. He was a wonderful, wonderful human being. I can't say enough for him or about him. He would frequently adjourn to Georgia Brown's next to our office for a few drinks after work, and I soon got onto him for that. I mean, I got onto his game and joined him most Friday afternoons. Once in a while, we'd give my wife Sharon a call at her work at the ACLU, and she'd come bounding over too. And Bruce, I know that you can appreciate, she really wishes that she could be here today and sends her absolute best. I guess I just want to say in addition that I'll always remember Don, and I'll always miss Don, and God bless you forever, Don, wherever you are now. Thank you for everything you did for me. And I want to thank Pastor Ellen and Bruce and the church also for having this wonderful tribute to him. And I know Don would be so happy to see so many of his colleagues, friends, and acquaintances here today.
Thank you.
I'm Bruce's sister, Sandy, and not a public speaker, but of course, we had the privilege and joy as a family of knowing Don for many, many years. And he's Uncle Don to my son and daughter. And we just cherished the time we had with him. My parents are both deceased, but they spent many loving reunion times, particularly on Belmont Road, enjoying Don's cooking. They looked forward to that as well as the company. My father always enjoyed the cooking except when Donald had any mushrooms in the dishes, because those were known to him as devilish toadstools. We will truly miss, but we have many, many precious memories.
I also didn't have anything prepared, but I just, oh, thank you. I didn't have anything prepared, but I just felt moved to share that my Uncle Don gave all of the cousins his love. And from the very beginning of the time that I don't even remember him, he gave me my teddy bear that I slept with, my life, my whole life. He gave me Play-Doh that my mom really wished he hadn't because it got in the carpet. He gave me the perfume maker she really didn't want me to have, amongst makeup, real makeup, and all of the other things that a mother doesn't want a daughter to have, but the daughter really would love. And he always knew that special gift, including very wise advice, as we've heard throughout my life, throughout our life. And that teddy bear also went along with me to college and now lives in Seattle. So he is remembered forever. And I just wanted to let everyone know how much he's loved from his family too.
Thank you.
I also hadn't prepared this, but if no one else is going to, thanks, speak about it, I have to recollect Bruce and Don's wedding because it was so wonderful. At the time, our minister was a wonderful interim minister named Doug Clark, and Don Clark and Doug Clark were a little confusing, but we generally identify people correctly. And we knew that, I think it was Adrian Fenty was the mayor then, was signing the legislation allowing gay marriage in the District of Columbia. And the Sunday after it was signed, and my recollection is that it was signed quite late in the week, so this was very soon after it was signed, we came into church, and most people didn't know that there was going to be a wedding as part of the church service that Sunday. We all felt like we were part of both a wonderful, loving occasion and an historic occasion. And Doug and Bruce and Don had the registry forms brought into the sanctuary, you know, those things that people usually disappear after the ceremony and sign and then come out and start partying, because we thought that, again, you know, we were making history, and that it was important for everyone to witness the full ceremony. It was one of the best weddings I've ever been to. And the reception that followed made true the statement that Don always said, that we have the best coffee hour in Christendom.
Thank you, Margaret. I'm glad you shared that. Well, we're now going to sing, I should say. I guess we're sharing it. We're going to sing another of Donald's favorite hymns. If you'll rise to sing I Love to Tell the Story, found on Chalice Hymnal, page 480.
Oh,
cousin Hillary will now read a section from Paul's first letter to the Corinthians.
Oh, either way.
Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable. It keeps no record of wrongs. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things.
Love endures. Don Clark was the first person who greeted me in this congregation. And while I'm not the only one to have had this experience, my circumstances may have differed from the usual visitor who walks through the doors. The summer of 2010, I was considering whether to submit my packet to this church's search committee as they sought a new pastor. I was at the point of doing so, but decided to first check out a worship service incognito since I lived in the area. I knew the interim pastor, the aforementioned Doug Clark, so I had a good cover in case anyone asked why I was here. The truth is, I was hoping to blend in, to arrive at the last minute and leave right after the service, just one of many worshipers. Except it was August, and there weren't many worshipers. I stood out. And at the end of the service, a tall, thin man with a mustache approached and said how glad he was that I'd come. He steered me toward coffee hour, which, as Margaret said, I later learned was called the best in Christendom. And we had a nice chat, in which I mumbled something about being a good friend of the interim pastor, and then left. Not to see him again until the following spring, when I was called as the church's new pastor. The truth is, while I may have been the only person enthusiastically greeted by Don who became the church's pastor, many others have been blessed by the same welcome. Don was all about hospitality, welcome. Don and Bruce, as was also mentioned earlier, also hosted what I like to call the best new member brunch in Christendom. In their beautiful Adams Morgan brownstone, I'm not sure how many new members were welcomed to a lovely brunch of delicious food and wine, a fire in the fireplace, seasonally, that is, good china and silver on the table. It was a lovely entree into our congregation, and it was the ethos Don and Bruce lived. One of my favorite Don stories took place shortly after I was called to be pastor. As recent moderator, he offered to assist with the fall's stewardship campaign, AKA Pledge Drive. I was delighted until he told me his one requirement, that our logo for that year's campaign be a rocket ship, which included a large rendering on a poster board to keep track of our progress. How could I say no? Don remains a very bright light in my life. As Josh mentioned with the paintings he has, I'm glad to say that every morning I wake up to 3 original Don Clarks, a beautiful trifecta of Maine, Iceland, and Montana, which is where I'm from, and which he painted especially for me. Someone also mentioned, I think Josh again, the art auction that Don and Bruce organized to support Joseph's House by auctioning off Don's artwork along with the work of some other artists in our congregation. It was a special project that he did for many years, and I do know that he'd be very happy if you can continue to support this wonderful organization that provides housing, healthcare, and community for people who otherwise would be all alone and ill on the streets. I miss Don. I miss our quarterly lunches at Cafe Deluxe until COVID and a greedy landlord closed it down. I miss his presence in the life of my youngest son, who is also gay and whom Don mentored for confirmation. I miss his laughter, his eye for beauty, and definitely his sometimes snarky sense of humor. I miss his love and his love of life. What I don't miss is how sick he got. And I'm grateful that wherever he is now, I think heaven for him might be Iceland or Costa Rica. He's at peace, and I pray experiencing joy. I wish I'd known Don longer, back when he had the awesome leather jacket in the picture on the cover of the worship bulletin. But I'm grateful I had 12 years of him, and I'm glad that so many of you, including and most especially you, Bruce, had so many more years. What can I say? Donald, you are beautiful, you are loved, you are missed, and love endures. Amen. I invite you to hold Donald in your hearts as Latia Barrett sings Over My Head.
Over my head, I hear music in the
Now Bruce is going to introduce his family and share a few words.
Latia, thank you so much. That was absolutely beautiful. I did want to introduce, I think you had a chance to meet some of our family when you came in, but I'd like to introduce them. Donald and my great-nephew Robbie and his father Rob are here, and his cousin Hillary from Seattle. And on my side, I have my lovely sister Sandy and her husband Jim, my nephew Dustin and his wife Amy and their lovely daughter Ann Chandler. I have my niece Hillary and her fiance Blake. And we also, happy to say, Donald and I, as you heard earlier, we have our created family. We have our 3 Moroccan sons, Omar, Anwar, and Hassan, are all here today. Hassan's lovely daughter Vivian, who happens to be Donald and my goddaughter, is here. And our dear friend Susan, who has always been like a member of the family. So I hope you have a chance to meet them all at the reception afterwards. I wanted to say that it's particularly fitting that we are celebrating in this sanctuary, which meant so much to Donald. Now, he was not a devoutly religious person, but he was deeply spiritual. And in this place, where searching is as valued as certainty, he found a spiritual home and a like-minded community. He was delighted to be a member of the choir, as has been said many times, and all the selections, musical selections today, were among his favorites. But if I had to name one characteristic that would best define him, it would be his devotion to friends and family. So many longtime friends and colleagues who are here today are testament to that. He nurtured and cultivated his friendships, and in return, in good times and bad, you were his sustenance. His mother's parents were from Iceland, but their ties with family there had been severed over the centuries since they had immigrated as children. Donald was proud of his Icelandic heritage and determined to discover roots. He located many distant but closely bonded relatives there. We now have dozens of cousins in Iceland, and many of them are on Zoom today, and we returned every summer. So I will be taking some of his ashes back to spread in the harbor and up the fjordur, which is close to the little house where we spent so many times. Donald could trace his Clark family tree back to Daniel Clark, who was one of the original settlers of Connecticut Colony in 1633. We went to Windsor, and he was treated like royalty as one of the descendants of the original settlers. And so I will be taking some of his ashes also back to Bellingham, Washington, to be buried with his parents as he wished. Of all his relations, Donald was closest to his mother. I found among his papers a quite remarkable letter that he wrote to her on Mother's Day, appropriately. In 3 full pages, he tells her all that she means to him and all that he wanted to say, but never did. He never sent that letter. He never sent it because he wrote to her on Mother's Day following her death. It's all the more poignant for that. I want to close, if I can, by reading some lines from that letter that express so well my feelings about him now. He writes, "You know, I really didn't know what you meant to me until you were gone. God knows we were close and both knew it was a special relationship. In those last days, I just prayed that God would deliver you from the pain and the anguish you faced. I got my wish. Stop. But I had no idea of the aftershock that I would experience. Once I got over my joy for you, then I had to confront my loss and my pain. I'm still working on that, and it's going to take a really long time. So Donald, yes, we know you're here. Your beautiful and bountiful spirit will live on among your beloved family and your many, many cherished friends. Rest in peace, my love.
Thank you, Bruce. And as you pointed out, and maybe as not everybody knows, today is actually Donald's birthday. In closing, I invite you all to join me in prayer. Loving and gracious God, thank you for bringing us together this day to celebrate the life of Donald Harrison Clark. Donald was a beautiful and big-hearted person, and we are grateful to have known him. May he rest in eternal joy and peace, and may your blessing be upon him and all here present. In your name we pray. Please rise for the sung benediction. We'll then remain seated for the postlude, and again, you are very welcome to a reception in the parlor.
said something to, I had no idea how they
Not ready to give
came
up.
to the church. It was
Not ready to graduate.
I didn't really think we were going to see. Oh, you hit the high point.
Well, it's probably good for balance.
And I see.